Meet Hassan Bhat, a young British-born militant Muslim. He's very well known to the authorities. At times they've believed him to be a jihadi.
The second is as a Muslim to support the jihad with Mullah Omar.
A friend of the London bus and tube bombers.
Here on this spot that Muhammad Sadiq Khan was sitting when I entered the flat.
A key recruiter and trainer of British Muslims willing to commit dreadful terrorist acts.
I was pushing guys to come from that I knew to come to Pakistan, get trained and be part of this worldwide jihad.
Then it was believed he had reformed, that he had set aside his terrorist sympathies.
What I've come to realise is that killing for the sake of killing and killing in the name of Islam for the sake of killing is completely and utterly prohibited.
Today, some people think he's in fact an agent for MI5.
This is being manipulated by a third party who we don't even know about. And that third party happened to be MI5.
Or maybe he's a con man, a fantasist, who has fooled the police and some of Britain and America's top investigative journalists.
Everything he's talked to you about in that book is a complete and utter lie.
One thing's for certain, he's both charismatic and deeply enigmatic.
I would say that, yeah, I did manipulate a lot of people.
And I'm intrigued to find out who he really is.
I know who I am myself sometimes. It's become that muddled and that everything intertwined.
It's time to try and discover the real Hassan Bhat. Hassan Bhat first caught the attention of newspapers and TV in 2006 when he was in his mid-20s. What interested so many journalists was his claims that he had been, for several years, a committed jihadi who had supported the idea of terrorism and suicide bombings even in Britain, but that he had, following the London bombings, had a major change of heart. Suddenly, newspapers, magazine articles and even a book were being written about him. Its author was Shiv Malik, who was not to know that his involvement with Hassan Bhat would later have a profound effect on his career.
This guy had been on TV, radio, newspapers, dozens and dozens of programs and been interviewed dozens and dozens of times. And he'd helped to create the archetype of the young angry Muslim. So in that sense, prima facie almost, he was interesting. This guy was part of our evolving Islamic history in this country. As in, when I say Islamic fundamentalist, as well as broader Islamic debate.
But how did Hassan become a jihadi? He was born in Luton in 1980, the third of 4 boys born to Pakistani immigrants. When Hassan was 3, he and his family moved to Cheetham Hill in Manchester.
When we moved from Luton, we moved onto this street here.
Which one's your house?
Yeah, I remember which one my house is as well. That one, the brick one, with the, not 55, 57. Just
what was this place like growing up in?
You know, to be fair, for Cheetham Hill generally had a bad reputation, but this was like a nicer, pleasanter area of Cheetham Hill. And this is the place where we learn a lot of hard values in life, such as if you get into a fight, make sure you don't get beaten up. This was by our dad, and if we got beaten up, then be prepared to be beaten up when you get home. My dad hated us losing the fight, so we made sure that, or we tried to make sure we never did lose a fight. As a Muslim, even now, I believe in, if someone's going to attack you, you shouldn't be afraid to fight back. But now, obviously, within reason, within what is considered reasonable force in self-defense.
Should we get out and have a walk, maybe?
Yeah, by all means, if you want. This tree, I remember climbing this tree so many times in my life. It used to grow apples. I don't know if it still does. And there used to be another tree actually quite close to it. This was this wall actually you're looking at here was our boundary for 4s and 6s when we played cricket. And as you can see, it's been extended slightly, but that was never there. It was just that small wall, and we used to play through our drive, and that was the boundary for the 4 and 6. And if I be completely honest with you as well, you know, if I was to move into an area into Manchester, if I had my own family, then this, you know, I would consider this area before actually Prestwich. Just there's more Muslims here, it feels more homely, and I don't know, it's just a nice area all over, generally. Yeah, so. It's important for Muslims to live with Muslims? No, not necessarily. I mean, majority of my life I've lived amongst non-Muslim, majority, in fact, not just non-Muslims, but, you know, Jewish families. So that's not important to me. But yeah, all my friends have been Pakistani in that sense. So because of that, that's the reason why I would, you know, still want to have. I don't know. It's just it's just a community feeling. And I'll tell you the funny thing, actually, Masood, was that whilst we lived in Cheetham Hill, which was supposed to be the so-called rough area, we didn't get involved in that many fights, or or in all the gangs that were available. It was only when we moved out into Prestwich and the sense of, I guess, identity and belonging started disappearing, because we started coming out of Prestwich into Cheetham Hill to meet up with more Muslims, and that's where we started getting involved in, you know, Usman in particular started getting involved in all the different type of gangs and stuff like that.
It was clear to TV journalists who met Hassan that he was a good talker. Someone who could provide a unique insight into how someone born in Britain could be seduced by militant Islam. The mainstream media were quick to catch on. Richard Watson was among the first to tell his story on TV on BBC's Newsnight programme. Hassan's fame even spread to America when CBS's 60 Minutes programme told his story on primetime TV.
In the verses of the Quran, in the sayings of the Prophet, and show that how it was permissible for people to go around killing innocent men, women and children.
You could explain to them why it's permissible to kill innocent men, women and children.
Well, a better way to put it is we would take away the innocence from the person, so they were no longer innocent men, women and children.
Men, women and children would become non-innocent.
Non-innocent and hence combatants and allowed to be targeted. What I've come to realise is that killing for the sake of killing and killing in the name of Islam for the sake of killing is completely and utterly prohibited, and is a big disease, a big problem and a cancer in the Muslim world, and it's a very dangerous cancer.
Hassan had even met with Home Office Minister Tony McNulty to see if the UK government could help Hassan with his mission to bring others away from extremism.
Tony McNulty, the terrorism minister, invited me to a conference. I then told McNulty that it was worth meeting Hassan, and a month later we got an invitation, both me and him, to sit in the Home Office with McNulty. So we sat down, we had a 2-hour meeting with McNulty, in which Hassan said, look, I'm going to tell you my story, and he did. He explained that he'd basically helped to fund terrorism to the terrorism minister in the Home Office. And he also said, I think I know how to get out of this, in that we need to have a theological debate using the jihadis' arguments against them. This seemed to convince the guy. I mean, you know, I guess the Home Office terrorism minister is a busy man, generally. And they spent 2 hours with him and me, and Hassan did most of the talking. And after that meeting, we were approached by one of the civil servants in the meeting called Tony Heel, and he offered some funding, or he invited us to submit an application for funding, which was a little bit of a surprise. But I think that also showed that they were serious.
But his changes had upset his old comrades, who one day attacked and stabbed him in the shoulder on his way home from the mosque. I also became fascinated by Hassan's story. I had first met him in May 2005 through a contact. I filmed with him at a rally in Blackburn.
You answered my question, I'm asking.
We got on really well and he invited me back to his home and even allowed me to film discussions between him and his friends. Even though we stayed in touch, it wasn't until when Hassan went public about his ideological change did I start filming with him again. I caught up with him on his way to a conference being organised by a right-wing think tank, the Centre for Social Cohesion. What I really wanted to know was why had he changed his mind about the global jihad?
I know you said if someone was trying to blow up a train or a plane or something like that, you should stop them. But there was a time when I think you wouldn't have stopped people.
That's right, yeah.
You know,
It probably would have helped him if I had actually the opportunity, yeah.
Yeah, there was that time. So what's changed?
When I started looking more into who I was planning on killing, and the kids that I was around, how do we justify that every single person living in Britain, America, in the West in general is not an innocent person? The question I had was trying to create more certainty rather than I had doubts. I was thinking, God, maybe it's the devil influencing me. So I need to make sure that I'm 100% convinced and sure of what I'm doing. And then that was it, I guess. It was to do with where we were living, the theology behind it, the idea that every single individual, Muslim or non-Muslim, is a target. It just didn't make sense to me anymore.
Yeah, I'm just looking at all the way the white people are looking at me, man. They're so scared of me. I don't blame them. Well, actually, I do, because if you think about it, the 4 guys who were bombers looked more like you than me. Should be scared of you. No, yeah. It's about time people start realizing people with big beards and shalwar kameez ain't that scary.
But Hassan's attendance doesn't go down well with the organisers of the debate. He's told that he will not be allowed to ask a question, and for some bizarre reason, I'm told I'm not allowed to film Hassan, otherwise I will be thrown out too. I was later told by the Centre for Social Cohesion that they'd received a phone call saying that Hassan was a security threat and that he may even be carrying a weapon.
I am quite openly has said on at least one instance that the war on terror shouldn't be a war on terror, but should be a war on Islam.
So what are you going to do when this is all finished? I mean, this can only last, I hope, for another 5 years or 10 years. Yeah. The impression I get is that there are so many people who this is thrown up, there's so much intellectual energy, people with so many talents. What I would hate to happen is that somebody becomes a professional sort of ex-jihadi or ex-Batteria member.
Yeah. I think, I actually agree, believe it or not, with the problem being a lot bigger than is actually being portrayed at the moment. Simply because having come from I always try to differentiate between an extremist, which is probably what Hizb ut-Tahrir falls under, and an actual terrorist, which is what unfortunately I fell under, and a lot more guys actually fell under. And I think those numbers are actually increasing a lot more than actually people know about, simply because it's being forced more underground and more people are being recruited. And what a waste of time, These people aren't going to solve anything, It's just all it really is quite sad actually to see that.
I don't think I've seen you this angry.
I'm not angry, I might seem it. I'm frustrated really badly, I don't care who I am. I don't like being humiliated.
Why did you feel humiliated?
Well, I'll give you an example. No one was searched going into that building. Not only and I've been searched, you have to remember, by Pakistani security services. I've been searched by British security services. I've been searched by jihadi security people. I ain't never been searched the way these guys searched me, and they did it in front of everyone. And then what frustrates me more is when I see I go into an audience of people who, maybe thinkers, maybe influential, may have newspapers and write in there. I think majority of them would not be able to convince a jihadi to leave the network. And in fact, makes me sad, because it just reinforces the idea to me why the numbers are increasing of Muslims being extremists. Because when you got people like that, sometimes you feel like you're completely isolated, and it's like, we're talking about it. I always say we need a dialogue. We don't need to go one way. You are wrong and we are right, and you have to adopt our way of life. It's just not going to work, and you know that as well as me, and that's what makes me sad. Yeah, that's just what gets me a bit down.
Among Hassan's many revelations about his life as a jihadi was the fact that he had met Muhammad Sadiq Khan, the leader of the 7/7 bombers, and that Khan had stayed at Hassan's flat in Pakistan. What was becoming clearer was that his time in Pakistan was crucial to his story. If I was really going to understand Hassan, we would have to go to Pakistan.
वालेकुम सलाम अमीर भाई, क्या हाल है, ठीक हो? अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह। अमीर भाई ये बस पूछना था, बताना था, तो इंशाल्लाह मैं पाकिस्तान का चक्कर लगाऊंगा इंशाल्लाह ज़रूर, ठीक है ना? तो वो जो भाई है ना हमारा उधर, वो बस उनसे इजाज़त लेना है, मतलब हमको मिल जाएगा ना ज़्यादा, हमको ये ना मतलब हमको कोई मार दे जर्नलिस्ट समझ के, ठीक है ना? फिर अमीर भाई ना, फिर बाद में बात होगी इंशाल्लाह। ओके, वालेकुम सलाम। I'll let some poor man use the credit, yeah. It's got £1.99.
Generous.
There's no point in giving a BT. There's a lot of poor people around here, yeah. I was speaking to basically a cousin of mine who's basically going to get us permission from the tribal areas to go in there to make this documentary. Get into the areas that a lot of British people went in for training, that I went in there for training, and hopefully meet with senior commanders of the Taliban who give permission to British people to be trained, and interview them and asking them what is their vested interest in allowing us to be trained.
The government says that 2,000-3,000 people are trained.
What, Pakistani Mujahideen?
No. Here in Britain, British Muslims.
Yeah, I'd say that number's quite accurate. But that's 2 years now that I haven't been in touch with people. The number could have risen easily, and people are still being trained. That comes from contacts. I'm sure when we go out there, people will tell us that British people are still coming out being trained, and they're training these people there.
Want to drive people to the truth, we need to come out. Homosexuality, be careful.
Hassan wanted to confront key people from his past who he believes led him down the path to terrorism. Omar Bakri was the head of Al-Muhajirun, the organisation that Hassan was with from 1999 to late 2002.
And as a Muslim, there's two separate religious obligations here. One with Muhajirun, which is to establish Khilafah. The second is, as a Muslim, to support the jihad.
It was as the head of Al-Muhajirun in Pakistan that Hassan first gained notoriety.
Yeah, this is going to be strange, this is. 3 years I haven't spoken to this guy, and this guy used to be my priest, basically, I guess. Someone who I would believe everything he said and literally accepted everything he said without question. Without Umar Bakri, I don't think Hizb ut-Tahrir would have existed today. Without Umar Bakri, Al-Muhajirun wouldn't have existed now. Without Umar Bakri, I don't think a lot of the jihadi, the people that went down the jihadi line would have existed. Umar Bakri was very, very, important. The way he's made so many Muslims give up so much, their degrees, their studying, their futures, and he's convinced them that the path that they're going on is a path for Jannah, I guess, a path for paradise. And look at, so many of his followers are now in prison. And what's he done for them? Nothing. What has he achieved for them? Nothing. When things got too hot, he jumped out of the kitchen and left everyone else to face the heat. And that's why I despise the man. But I still think that he's important in the solution. I think he has, people like him, people like Abu Qatada, Abu Hamza, have to be part of the solution, in the sense of it's easy to lock them up or expel them from the country. It doesn't solve the problem. We need to address these people's ideas, and we need to tackle them head on. And I've not been nervous here for a long time. All of a sudden I feel nervous how he's going to respond. So let's have a this is his number, yeah? Let's have a look. 0, 0. I don't know how, just before I start, I don't know how I'm going to refer to him as Umar. I don't see him as a sheikh anymore. I think he'll be shocked, actually, and I'm sure word will get around all of Britain that I've called him, if this is his number. It's ringing. This is really nerve-wracking. Hello, assalamu alaikum. Could I speak to Sheikh Umar Bakri, please? My heart's beating very fast. I don't know why. I wonder how he's going to react. How are we going to put the phone down? Hello, assalamu alaikum. Sheikh Umar, Hassan speaking from Manchester. How are you? Alhamdulillah, not too bad, not too bad. And yourself? Yeah, 3 years, 3 years. Alhamdulillah, not too bad at all, not too bad. Just obviously you've seen my changes in the press and things like that. The reason I'm actually ringing Sheikh is because I'm making a documentary, basically, following my life's type of thing. You played an important part in my life for a long time. Excellent. What I'm planning to do, inshallah, I'm planning to come to Lebanon. I just want to see whether you're available. Okay, excellent, inshallah. Okay, then, inshallah, well, I'll keep in contact with you. I've got your phone number. And once we make plans to come over, inshallah, I'll definitely ring you, and inshallah, hopefully we can meet up. Okay, take care of yourself, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. He was, when I said you've heard of my changes, he said he's very happy about my changes. And, he's stressing, I think, just in case he's being recorded. I don't know if you could hear it anyway, but he's stressing that we've never been in favour of action in Britain. And he's very proud of he's very proud of the fact that he played a massive part in my life, because it was only when this is his words, by the way, it's only when I went to Pakistan that I became a lot more militant. But now that I've returned back to the right path of non-militancy, he's very happy for me. He hasn't lost the ability to try to make himself look good and everyone else look bad. And he said on the phone, for example, he was very happy about my change. Whereas, at the same time, his students in this country are calling me an apostate.
How did it feel to hear his voice after such a long time?
Prefer not to say. I wasn't happy.
But just as we were sorting out our trip to Pakistan, Hassan's wife was arrested and charged with trying to buy firearms. Hassan was also arrested but released without charge. With the BBC getting increasingly worried about Hassan, filming came to a standstill. About a month later, it became clear that Hassan was not involved, and filming continued. I wanted to know what had happened to his wife.
How are things getting on with your wife? And you don't want to talk about that?
No, I prefer not.
Okay, fine.
We got the all clear for our trip to Pakistan. Hassan would be returning after 5 years away from the country, so I wondered how he was feeling about going back there.
Are you worried about going to Pakistan in a couple of days?
I initially was really stressed, actually. And because of the fact that it's been delayed and it's been delayed and delayed, it's come to a point where I've actually, not where I don't believe I'm going Pakistan, but it's more due to the fact that it's just, you've had more time to prepare for it. So no, I'm not that nervous as I was in December. And now it's January, so I'm not as nervous as I was, but I'm quite nervous. And I think once I get out of, inshallah, once I get out of the airport itself, my nerves will just, I think, looking forward to go and see the areas that I spent probably 2 of the most important years of my life in. And
how did your time in Pakistan change you?
It allowed me to be a lot more militant, and it gave me access to things that I couldn't have access in Britain, and at the same time it opened my eyes to a lot more of the suffering, I guess, that Muslims are going through in Pakistan. So in that sense, that's what I guess changed me. It's quite easy to try to blame Pakistan and Pakistanis for causing Muslims in Britain to be extreme
extremists. And to a certain degree that's true, but at the very same time, Muslims who are coming from Britain are holding already onto a very militant version of Islam and find it quite easy to propagate that idea in Pakistan itself.
Do you feel at home in Pakistan?
Yes. I mean, the acceptance you get, I know for a fact I could never get in this country.
Hassan and I were travelling separately to Pakistan, he from Manchester and me from London. But a few hours after I arrived in Lahore, I got a phone call that Hassan had been detained at Manchester airport. I guess Hassan had been right to be nervous after all, and I was learning quickly that working with Hassan was not going to be easy. To my relief, the next morning Hassan called. He had been released by the police and was booked on the next flight to Islamabad. That same day, I left from Lahore to Islamabad to meet him at the airport, and our plan was to travel back to Lahore together. However, I was worried. Would he be allowed to enter Pakistan? Were the Pakistani authorities keen to get their hands on him? It was going to be a long day.
Yeah, I just can't explain right now how I'm still a little bit nervous. I know you're freezing, but I still feel boiling hot, really. And my wife wanted to know what I look like when I've landed, but I still am nervous because until I get into Lahore and out onto the streets of Pakistan, I think I'll then feel relaxed. But right now I'm so happy to be here. And to imagine 5 years ago when I came, I had a totally different mindset. And now coming again with a completely different mindset, it's just really weird as well, yeah. You know, one minute you're coming to die in the country, I guess, in some way. Now you're coming to, I don't know, it feels really strange, right? I've got so many mixed emotions. There's something about it that is just home. And I don't know how to explain that at all, really.
As you remember it.
Amazing, yeah. It's just looking around, it just looks, if I'll be honest with you, to a certain degree, like I've never left. Yeah, it's beautiful here, man.
Lahore, the capital of Pakistan's Punjab province, is where Hassan first set up with Al-Muhajirun. Though the organisation was no longer active in Pakistan, I still wanted to see the key places from Hassan's past.
We used to have breakfast here quite a lot with Al-Muhajirun because our office is only about 100 yards down the road. And we're going to be standing there eating.
Worried about the bad publicity of making a film crew eating whilst standing by the roadside, the crew owner sets up a table for us inside. After the traditional Lahori breakfast, Hassan decides to chat to some of the staff.
तो आजकल जो हालात हैं पाकिस्तान में, आपके ख्याल में मतलब
कोई हालात नहीं पाकिस्तान के, हर पासे गड़बड़ धमाके ਇੱਥੇ ਹੋਰ ਤਾਂ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ ਤੋਂ ਖੁਦ ਆਦੇ ਬਣਾ ਜੀ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਨੇ ਮੌਲੀ ਨੂੰ ਬੱਜਿਆ ਸੀ ਐਟਮ ਬੰਬ ਟੈਮ ਬੰਬ ਜੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ ਨੂੰ ਖਾਣਾ ਹੈ
क्यों हो रहे हैं? कभी कर रहा कौन नहीं है? तालिबान के अल-कायदा
ये तो सही भाई सोचा जाए ना कि तालिबान भी जो मुसलमान कलमा करने वाले ने जो अमरीका ने उन्होंने जंग करके उनके हक इन्हों का भी ये हिस्सा लैन क्यों करते 20 साल इस तरह तंग करना अपने तो सलाम से गया अभी तक हमें किसी नहीं पढ़ना यानी कि वो
common. Last question is, what does he think of Osama bin Laden?
उधर अड्डे दी
ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕੀ ਦੇਣ ਹੈ ਉਸਾਮਾ ਬਿਨ ਲਾਦਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਬੰਦਾ ਅੱਛਾ ਬੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ
ईमानदार बंदा उधर अपनी जान कुर्बान करने में खड़े करते हैं
This is just a normal guy. Loves Osama bin Laden. Loves Saddam Hussein. And I guarantee you, if we went around, and this is just anyone, this is not being set, we just met this guy, and I'm sure if you went, so you can imagine how easy it was for someone with a ideology, a political ideology, to take advantage of someone who's just a normal common worker. Because they've already got a certain mindset in this country.
But at that point, you didn't have 9/11. You didn't have all of those other things to convince people.
Yeah, not for, well, initially when I got here, but 9/11 happened 3 or 4 months after I got here, so.
And then your job became so much easier.
Exactly.
But my thing is that I don't think a man like that would be useful to someone like Al-Muhajirin, a group like Al-Muhajirin.
No, but what they become useful for is the fact that they're ground support. Not every person you're going to use is going to become a hardcore jihadi. But what it does is, public opinion was still an important part of the fight.
No, but what I'm not talking about turning people into hardcore jihadis. I'm talking about people who have the intellectual ability to understand your ideas.
But I'll give you an example. These are the people that would come with us on demonstrations and make a demonstration that might be led by 50 people into a demonstration that's now is a group of 500-600 people. That's why they're important.
I think we have to understand, as a Muslim, there's two separate religious obligations here. One with Muhajirun, which is to establish Khilafah. The second is, as a Muslim, to support the jihad with Mullah Umar, whether that be financially, verbally or physically, whether that may be clothing.
Hassan wanted to show me where it all began for him in Lahore. The Al-Muhajirun offices where he first shot to notoriety, famously encouraging his British countrymen to come out and join the cause.
Yeah.
Is it dangerous to get out and film here?
This is where we did our majority of our interviews initially, where when all the craze started.
You mean interviews to the press and stuff?
Yeah. We had a massive sign on the outside saying Al-Muhajirun offices. At the front was like the press stroke thingy hall. God man, that brings some memories back, yard. That's where we broke the news for first guys that passed away from Britain in Afghanistan.
But had there been people from Al-Muhajireen?
No, they weren't from Al-Muhajirun. I actually didn't know about them until afterwards, because then I was selected as the spokesman who would break the news. Love to have gone knocked on his house, man. Out of everything, that feels strange.
Why strange?
That's where I gained notoriety, I guess. Where I first became known to the world press, yeah.
Do you think you were ever addicted to power?
No, I don't think that, no. Becoming known and, I guess, infamous or whatever you want to call it, because that's what we thought we had to, we had to create so much public awareness and public opinion for what we were calling towards that it became part and parcel of the method, and I guess that became slightly addictive.
It made you feel something?
Yeah, of course, I'm not going to, you're becoming known to, you're 21 years old, you're becoming known to the whole world's media, of course it becomes addictive.
During his time in Pakistan, Hassan met with other Western militants. Among them was Junaid Babar, who Hassan shared a flat with. Junaid was eventually arrested in 2004 in the United States and became a key witness in some of the most high-profile cases in the UK, including the trial of 9 British men who were planning to target nightclubs and the Blue Water shopping centre.
That flat, zit number 4, was the one owned by Junaid Babar. Number 5 was the flat where I had met the alleged killer of, and I say alleged even though he's found guilty in this country. This is because so many other people, including Pervez Musharraf, have said someone else committed the murder, but the so-called killer of the US journalist Daniel Pearl. And I met him, the man who's accused of that, in there whilst he was supposed to be on the run. We also had number 1 and we also had number 9. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flats.
So this was effectively an Al-Muhajireen building?
Basically, yeah. everything was coordinated from here.
Where was the money coming from?
It's coming from people in Britain. People who wanted to support us while we were here. A lot of memories, yeah.
Where are all those people that you were with?
All of them are back in Britain, yeah.
What are they doing now?
Some are in prison. Others are have left the network as well, and have completely become inactive in any type of activity. Become, I guess, disillusioned is the right word, with what they were doing here in the first place. And as you know, Junaid Babar has become Supergrass, and this whole floor was really controlled by him and his activities, yeah. I never thought I would see this place again, yeah. I remember running from number 8 to number 4 and back and forth. Amazing, yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing. The only reason they probably didn't own every flat on this floor was because the agency started putting a lot of pressure onto the owners not to allow any new guys to come in, and at the same time, when the leases were finished, they started refusing to renew the leases. So guys started moving out. It didn't really make sense why. I thought it would have made more sense to allow them to just
keep an eye
on everyone in one place.
Suddenly, we had to cut short our tour. Hassan got a call from our fixer. A meeting he had been trying to sort out was now ready to go, so we had to leave. As he had did with HT, Hassan soon grew disillusioned with Al Muhajirun, and eventually, while still in Pakistan, he left the organisation. By now he had already made contact with more jihadi-orientated organisations such as Sipir Saba and Lashkar Jangvi. Lashkar Jangvi was formed in 1996 and since then had become one of Pakistan's most active militant organisations. In its early days, Lashkar Jangvi targeted the country's Shia minority who it regarded as non-Muslim. But with the coming of 9/11 and the rise of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, it had now joined the global jihad.
But it soon became apparent that a suicide bomber had struck at the Bhutto entourage just outside the park exit as the former Prime Minister was leaving the meeting.
The group had been responsible for many of the recent suicide bombings, as well as the assassination of Pakistan's former Prime Minister, Benazir Bhutto. It is also the group with which Hassan trained while in Pakistan. We were about to meet with their corps commander for Punjab.
If आप बता सकते हैं मतलब थोड़ा अपने बारे में नाम नहीं
मैं अपने आप को बातचीत मुसलमान मैं ये समझता हूँ शुरू से मेरी ये सोच है कि पाकिस्तान के अंदर जो है वो खिलाफत रास्ता का निज़ाम आना चाहिए जो भी गवर्नमेंट आई है सियासी आई है या मिलिट्री की आई है कोई भी आया तो उसने वो लाइन ही छोड़ दी है वो लाइन से हट के काम कर रहे हैं तो इसलिए हमने सोचा कि इसके लिए कुछ ना कुछ तो होना चाहिए और हम यानी उन्हीं लोगों की साथ में खड़े हो गए उन्हीं लोगों के साथ शामिल हो गए कि वो लोग जो है वो जो कोशिश कर रहे हैं थोड़ी है बहुत है आज होती है कामयाब वो हमारी ज़िंदगी में होती है नहीं होती
तो जो आजकल हो रहे हैं एक्सप्लोजन
जी
जो मतलब पूरे पाकिस्तान में 2007 में जितने हुए हैं
जी
कभी भी नहीं इतने हुए पहले तो लाहौर में भी कभी भी नहीं हुआ मतलब कितने इसी साल हुआ ना पहले 2008 में दीनी मसला है या सियासी मसला है जो काम हो रहा है ये दीन के हो रहा है या पॉलिटिक्स के लिए
मैं ये समझता हूँ कि ये सब कुछ जो हो रहा है वो अल्लाह की रज़ा के लिए हो रहा है अल्लाह के निज़ाम को यहाँ लाने के लिए हो रहा है मुशर्रफ साहब या जनरल साहब ये बात कर रहे हैं कि ये बुनियाद परस्त और हैं और जो वो अपना रोशन ख्याल हैं वो और हैं
तो जो नौजवान आते हैं यूके से और उसको ट्रेनिंग करने के लिए تو آپ کے خیال میں سے وہ
اگر مسلمان اپنے آپ کو ٹرین نہیں کرتا، جو وقت کے حساب سے اسلحہ ہے، جو وقت کے حساب سے ٹریننگ ہے، اس حساب سے اپنے آپ کو تیار نہیں کرتا، تو وہ ان چیزوں کا بھی تحفظ نہیں کر سکتا. نہ اس کی نماز بچتی ہے، نہ اس کا کلمہ بچتا ہے، نہ اس کا قرآن بچتا ہے، کچھ بھی نہیں بچتا. جب تک وہ ٹرین نہیں ہوگا تب تک میں یہ سمجھتا ہوں کہ انگلینڈ والے لوگوں کو زیادہ ضروری ہے، کیونکہ ہم نے وہاں بھی خلافت راشدہ کا نظام لے کے آنا ہے.
جی
خالی یہ نہیں کہ وہ افغانستان میں آ جائے، عراق میں آ جائے، پاکستان میں آ جائے. تو اللہ پاک نے دین جو ہے وہ پوری دنیا کے لیے بلا کے بھیجا ہے. اسلام پوری دنیا میں غلبے کے لیے آیا ہے. اس میں انگلینڈ بھی شامل ہے، اس میں امریکہ بھی شامل ہے، اس میں کینیڈا بھی شامل ہے. اور اس کے لیے جو وہ ٹریننگ اور اسلام اپنے آپ کو مسلح کرنا، اپنے آپ کو جدید جو اسلحہ ہے اس کے مطابق اپنے آپ کو مینٹین کرنا، وہ اس کے لیے بہت ضروری ہے.
تو جو مطلب پھر جو نوجوان آئے تھے ٹریننگ ادھر سے کر کے مطلب واپس گئے تھے انگلینڈ، تو ادھر پہ مطلب کوئی لوگوں نے اٹیک کیا بھی ہے، مطلب جو لنڈن میں ہوا ہے، اس سے علاوہ اتنے لوگ پکڑے بھی گئے ہیں، تو کافی نقصان ہوا ہے. آپ کے خیال میں مطلب جو جس لوگوں نے اٹیک کیا ہے ان لوگوں نے اچھا کیا ہے یا؟
وہ تو ظاہر ہے بات چیت ہے، مسلمان جو انہوں نے ٹریننگ کی اسلامک سوچ کے لیے، اسلامک اپنے آپ کو منوانے کے لیے، اپنے جو نظریات ان کی یعنی آگے بڑھانے کے لیے، تو وہ 100% اپنے موقف پہ ٹھیک ہے. انہوں نے جو کیا وہ 100% درست تھا.
تو جو فرض کرو آپ کے پاس کوئی نوجوان آئے یو کے سے یا امریکہ سے یا یورپ سے، اور کوئی بھائی جان ہمارے لیے آپ انتظام کرو ٹریننگ کے لیے، آپ ان کے لیے کیا؟
میں سب سے بڑی بات تو یہ کہ میں اس کو سعادت سمجھوں گا کہ میں اس کو جو ہے نا وہ اکاموڈیٹ کروں. میں جس حد تک بھی کر سکتا ہوں گا میں انشاءاللہ ان کو اکاموڈیٹ کروں گا اس سلسلے میں.
تو آخری بس سوال ہے آپ کا کیا سوچ ہے طالبان کے بارے میں، یا اسامہ بن لادن کے بارے میں، یا مصعب الزرقاوی کے بارے میں، یہ جو شیشان میں لڑ رہے ہیں ان کے بارے میں آپ کا کیا سوچ ہے؟ مطلب پورا دنیا اور جو مطلب یو کے اور پاکستان، یو کے تو امریکہ کے علماء بھی وہ بھی کہتے ہیں یہ سب سے بڑے دہشت گرد ہیں. آپ کے خیال میں یہ لوگ آپ کا سوچ کیا ہے ان لوگوں کے بارے میں؟
میں یہ سمجھتا ہوں کہ اللہ پاک نے ان لوگوں کو موجودہ وقت کے حساب سے، جیسے ہم یعنی عربوں کے اندر صلاح الدین ایوبی تھا، تو وہ اب بکس کے اندر ہم پڑھتے ہیں تو وہ اب ہیرو مانا جاتا ہے.
بالکل.
تو اس وقت کے اگر حساب سے دیکھیں گے تو وہ بہت بڑا دہشت گرد تھا. برِ صغیر میں اگر دیکھتے ہیں تو ٹیپو سلطان جو ہے وہ بہت بڑا مجاہد ہے اب بکس کے اندر. اس کے لیے سیمینار ہوتے ہیں، اس کا یوم منایا جاتا ہے، اس کے لیے بڑے لوگ فاتح خوانی کرتے ہیں. تو انگریز کے خلاف اس نے جہاد کیا ہے، تو وہ اپنے وقت کے حساب سے پھر بہت بڑا دہشت گرد ہے. تو ہمیں اس سے کچھ نہیں، ہم تو اللہ کی رضا کو دیکھنا ہے، نہ کہ ہم نے کسی بندے کو دیکھنا ہے، نہ کسی حکومت سے انسپائر ہوتے ہیں. ہم تو صرف اللہ کی رضا کو دیکھیں گے.
Hassan was not willing to discuss his changes in ideology. Amir Fixer, who had also been a member of Lashkar Jangvi in the past, explained why it was bad to talk about these things openly.
آپ کا کیا سوچ ہے میرے آپ جو نئی نظریات کے بارے میں؟
میرا خیال ہے کہ آپ نے جو اسٹڈی کی ہے یا آپ کا کیا ایکسپیرینس ہے اس کی وجہ سے آپ نے چینج لے لیا ہے، یہ تو اچھی بات ہے.
طالبان ہے یا القاعدہ کے لوگ، وہ کیا ان کو کیا سوچ میرے بارے میں کیا آپ کے خیال میں ہوگا؟
ظاہر ہے وہ تو دیکھیں گے کہ ایک بندہ جو اگر وہ ہمارے ساتھ صحیح چل رہا تھا اب نہیں چلے گا تو کمی محسوس ہوگی، تو اس میں آگے اگینسٹ بھی چل سکتے ہیں، پھر آپ ان کے دشمن ہی ہوئے نا.
جو باتیں حسن ابھی کر رہا ہے اس سے کیا آپ کو ایسے لگتا ہے کہ اس کی زندگی پہ خطرہ ہے؟ اس کی زندگی پہ
بالکل ایک دم چینج لے گا. وہ جو لوگ جن کی وجہ سے اگر کسی کو اس سے فائدہ ہو رہا تھا یا کوئی اس کے دماغ سے جو ہے وہ فائدہ اٹھا رہا تھا، تو ایک دم وہ تو بند ہو گیا نا ایک چیپٹر. تو ظاہر ہے پھر وہ اس کے خلاف تو جائیں گے. ادھر انہوں نے ایسے دوست جو قتل کر دیے ہیں کہ جو 20 سال سے ان کے ساتھ چل رہے تھے.
I was sort of starting to understand why Hassan was so reluctant to talk openly about his changes. Even my own experience in Pakistan had taught me that you never know who is listening or who you can trust.
gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses. Evil minds that plot destruction, sorcerer of death's construction. In the fields of bodies burning, as the war machine keeps turning. Death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed mind.
Amir our fixer wanted to have us over for dinner, but he also wanted to show us something. His prized collection of guns.
And tell him, actually, as they say, strapped. No. But कमीज का मसला नहीं होता. ये ना उसको clip. I think every man likes to carry a gun, yaar. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I've used the bigger version of this. This is a mini AK-47. As simple as cocking it back, firing it.
There were clearly some aspects of his past life that Hassan still enjoyed.
What they actually show you is just light arms training, is how to use the gun basically and practice your aim with it. And all those Rambo films that you see where you're just holding your... two of them he's got. No.
With dinner and guns out of the way, Hassan began calling his old Muhajiroon friends to arrange interviews. He hadn't spoken to them since he left Pakistan all those years ago.
क्या हाल है रुमान हसन बात कर रहा हूँ अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह अल्लाह का शुक्र सब आराम से आ गया हूँ यार कोई तंग नहीं भी किया फिलहाल तो अभी देखते हैं आप सुनाएं I will do inshallah ta'ala alright यार take care of yourself then यार okay Allah Hafiz वालेकुम सलाम कमरान भाई क्या हाल है हसन बात कर रहा हूँ पहचाना ना यार पहचानिए नहीं खान साहब ले दस यार क्या किसी बंदे पहचानिया ही नहीं इधर लाहौर में ही Jill doesn't know I've actually come here to the BBC. I don't want to scare him. Neither does Kamran actually, so it's going to be an issue of going there, spending a few hours with him, with Amir by me and him without the camera. He's had problems, isn't it, in the past. He doesn't know. I don't think he knows about my changes. So until we speak to him and make him realise that he's not going to be in danger, you know, until he realises that himself, and obviously he also sees that we put our neck on the line, inshallah, and we've got Amir by with us, so it should be alright. Let's see what happens.
Having spent a few days in Lahore, we headed to Islamabad, Pakistan's capital. Hassan had spent the majority of his time living there when he was in Pakistan. We were hoping to meet some of Hassan's old friends.
How have the last 3 or 4 days been?
I just see Pakistan and Pakistanis in a different light than with this sense of revolution that we came with last time. Since we've been here, you know, there's definitely a sense there that, you know, we're being continuously watched and continuously tracked. Yeah, so, you know, all those things are part and parcel of a jihadi's life, whereas obviously now trying to make a documentary, you just don't want to end up in prison. But no, it doesn't scare me being watched or followed. You know, I've been watched and followed in the UK for the last 3 years of my life.
How do your family deal with it?
You know, at first there was a lot of anger and frustration that I'm bringing a lot of problems and a lot of, like I said, a lot of heat down, but I mean, they've come to accept it, I guess. My mother obviously worries the most, definitely, but at the same time, she's also a very, very strong and determined character, because, you know, I've been involved in the, you know, or I was involved for 10 years of my life. First time I was arrested. To be honest with you, that's the most I've seen her stressed. And since then, it's just become part and parcel of her life.
that he's always expecting something to happen. And that's not a nice feeling as a son, that you feel that your mum's always expecting something bad to happen. But at the same time, you also appreciate that your mum's strength, because you know there's not that stress involved that other people have in their families that I have to put up with.
Hassan was still trying to convince his friends to meet us. They were worried about his past, whether they too would be tracked and arrested.
Hello. Walaikum salam Kamran bhai, kya haal hai? Theek hai? Alhamdulillah, Allah ka shukr. छुट्टी है आज आपकी? आओ ना यार इधर, तो बता दूंगा इंशाल्लाह. फोन पे नहीं बात करनी. पर ऐसे पुट्ठा शुट्टा कोई नहीं काम कर रहा. उधर ना फिक्र कर. वो पुट्ठे शुट्टे काम खत्म हो गए. और मैं बस आप जैसे यार हार्ड वर्किंग बंदा हूँ यार. Okay, फिर इंशाल्लाह. Allah Hafiz. That was Kamran. He's going to tell me exactly later on today. He said basically he's going to confirm a time he's going to come. He finds it difficult to believe that I've changed. He laughed actually when I told him. He's worried, yeah. I can hear in his voice. I mean, he's making an excuse about his wife. But they're scared. It seems like everyone's scared. And it wouldn't have surprised me if people from intelligence services have already actually met them and said, stay away from Hassan while he's here. Otherwise, it just leads to trouble for you in the long term. This is a guy, yeah, if I asked him to come down in 2003, he would have been on the next.
Maybe it's bad memories for him now.
Of course. You know, he was he was the head of Al-Muhajirun in Pakistan. And he obviously put up with all of the rubbish when it did happen, I guess. You know, I think we're paranoid. So imagine the fact that we can leave Pakistan, whereas he's stuck here. Makes perfect sense why he doesn't want to actually spend too much time with me. Plus he's got a job, a secure job. Everything's, you know, going good for him, I guess, now all of a sudden. And, you know, the sacrifices that he was willing to make in the past. And the sad thing is, and the funny thing is actually, I remember when I once spoke to, you know, Kamran, I said, you know, people in the past in Pakistan were willing to sacrifice anything. And he said to me, yeah, but the thing is, every time they sacrifice, right at the end, the people in charge always betray them. And that's exactly how I feel now, that we betrayed these guys by leaving them here in the lurch. But I hope he can understand that. You know, with me it was an issue of my passport being revoked, and hence why I didn't try to travel back to Pakistan. You know, but at the same time I'm glad, because if it never had been, I wouldn't be standing here today. You know, I would have flown back to Pakistan in 2003. So I guess, in some sense, I would have, I don't know where I would have been, yeah? Prison, dead, or maybe Iraq, maybe Afghanistan. No idea at all. Would have probably still been a jihadi, but you know.
What do you think?
I feel like I'm responsible for so many people, and not just British people, Pakistani people, that I was, you know, they looked up to me, respected me, and had hopes from me. And I feel responsible for misguiding them in the sense of something that was supposed to be done, you know, for Islam was being done for some political agenda or someone's, you know, misinterpretation, you know, for me, misunderstanding of Islam. So, yeah, I do feel responsible, and it does. You know, it does get on my nerves, where, you know, where it makes me think all the time, and hence why I now want to do something that'll make me, you know, against the work that I've done, and hopefully get, you know, those people who had so much potential with them, hopefully get them back on track.
Definitely.
Eventually, Kamran agreed to meet with us, but it was on the condition that we conceal his identity.
आपको क्या खास बात लगा अल-महाजिरून में जिस पे आप इम्प्रेस हुए?
एक तो सबसे अहम बात ये थी कि ये यंग बॉयज थे सब और रेडिकल थिंकिंग की बहुत ज़्यादा स्ट्रेट बात करते थे कोई पाकिस्तानी जो थे ये लोग तंजीमें ये थोड़े सा पॉलिटिक्स में इन्वॉल्व थे ये लोग पॉलिटिक्स में नहीं थे और फिर शुरू में तो मुझे ऐसे ही महसूस हुआ कि ये लोग मतलब काफ़ी ठीक हैं बेहतर काम कर रहे हैं दूसरों के मुकाबले में तो ये चीज़ें देख के फिर मैं इनके साथ मिल गया था हाँ एक चीज़ इम्प्रेस सबसे बड़ी अहम बात ये थी कि लोग कहते थे कि इंग्लैंड में रहते हैं इनके पास नेशनलिटी है पैसा है सब कुछ है तो ये इतनी परेशानी में क्यों है यहाँ पे ये क्यों यहाँ पे आते हैं सड़क रोड्स पे खड़े हैं और बात कर रहे हैं या लोगों को बता रहे हैं इनको क्या फ़ायदा क्या है इसी से तो
ऐसे वक्त आया था जब आप अपनी जान देने के लिए तैयार थे एवरीथिंग सैक्रिफाइस करने के लिए तैयार थे
एक दफ़ा तो अब्बू के साथ काफ़ी मेरी लड़ाई हो गई थी अब्बू ने कहा था घर छोड़ के चले जाओ निकल जाओ तो मैं वो भी करने के लिए तैयार हो गया था मैंने कहा चलो मेरी वजह से शायद इनको परेशानी होगी तो मैं घर से चला जाता हूँ तो वो भी एक मसला बना अब्बू के लिए भी मसले बने तो इसलिए काफ़ी मसाइल आए लेकिन बस फिर मैं चलता रहा इनके साथ काफ़ी अर्से तक काम करता रहा बहुत इंटरेस्ट टाइम था मतलब उस टाइम में काफ़ी एक्सेस थी इंटेलिजेंस की बैक पे और पूछते भी थे बात भी करते थे तो फैमिली को भी उनकी वजह से मसाइल आ रहे थे मतलब मेरे बहन भाई भी थे पेरेंट्स भी हैं तो डेंजरस ऑब्वियसली था क्योंकि हम जो बात कहते थे वो स्ट्रेट और रेडिकल बात थी जो गवर्नमेंट के अगेंस्ट बात जाती थी काफ़ी हमारे पीछे थी और उन्होंने कुछ लड़कों को अरेस्ट भी किया तो खौफ रहता था हर वक्त
तो आप फिर एंड पे छोड़े क्यों हैं अल-महाजिरून को
सबसे बेसिक रीज़न उसमें थी कि जो कॉज था जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का अल-महाजिरून का जो कॉज था सबसे फ्रॉम द फर्स्ट डे वो चेंज हो गया था
जी
कॉज इनका था एक इस्लामिक स्टेट की तरफ लोगों को आगे माइल करने के लिए देन उमर बकरी ने अपनी थिंकिंग चेंज कर ली वो अहले हदीस और सल्फी की तरफ कन्वर्ट हो गया और मेजोरिटी पाकिस्तानी लोग जो उनसे हैं वो अहले हदीस नहीं है और ना सल्फी हैं तो उसमें पहले कोई डिफरेंस नहीं था फिरके का कोई डिफरेंस सेक्ट का कोई डिफरेंस नहीं था
जी
तो ये चीज़ लड़कों को सबको बहुत ज़्यादा फेड अप किया कि जो कॉज था वो बिल्कुल लाइन से हट गए
फर्स्ट टाइम आफ्टर 5 years we met and I've told you my new opinions मेरा जो सब नज़रियात है आपके ख्याल में मेरे नज़रियात के बारे में आप अब क्या सोचते हैं
देखिए मैं पहले भी ट्रस्ट करता था अभी भी ट्रस्ट करता हूँ और जिस तरह मैं चेंज हो चुका हूँ हर लड़का चेंज हो गया और उसमें आप भी हो जो पहले की बात थी वो अब नहीं रही जो पहले काम हो रहा था वो अब नहीं है और आदमी मतलब इतनी किस तरह मुश्किलात अकेला बर्दाश्त कर सकता है और अब खुद ही आदमी को नॉर्मल लाइफ गुजारने के लिए नॉर्मल तरीके से जीना पड़ता है तो वही पता है अब आपको नॉर्मल होना पड़ेगा चेंज करना पड़ेगा अपने आप को अब जो आपने डिसीजन लिया है वो मेरे ख्याल में बेहतर है उससे आपकी लाइफ नॉर्मल होगी अदरवाइज आपको डिफ़िकल्टीज बर्दाश्त करना पड़ेंगे इन फ्यूचर भी तो अगर आप चेंज हैं हो गए हैं तो फिर इंशाल्लाह आपको कोई मसला नहीं हो गया सब कुछ ठीक हो जाएगा विद द पैसेज ऑफ टाइम
सिचुएशन है आपको भी फिक्र करते हो मतलब आपने जो ताल्लुकात रखे थे अल-महाजिरून के साथ
ऑब्वियसली उसका खौफ तो रहता ही है अभी मेरा पास्ट है पास्ट की वजह से कुछ भी हो सकता है तो उसकी वजह से मुझे परेशानी तो है
मतलब शुरू जब मिले हैं कल ही मिले हैं तो मैंने आपको बताया मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ उससे पहले मैंने आपसे कोई बात नहीं की है फ़ोन पे तो शुरू में तो मतलब आप नहीं करना चाहते थे इंटरव्यू एंड पे आके आपके ख्याल में ये जो मैसेज आप दे रहे हो मैं आपके ख्याल में व्हाई डिड यू नो
पहले तो मुझे खौफ था कि पता नहीं अभी भी जो है तुम सही हो कि नहीं फिर मैं ना इस्तेमाल हो जाऊँ जैसे पहले इस्तेमाल हो गया था तो फिर तुमने जब बताया कि नहीं पहले बात नहीं है अभी मैं चेंज हो गया हूँ अभी लोगों की बेहतरी के लिए हो रहा है कि जो लोगों के ऊपर इल्ज़ाम लग रहे हैं वो बेहतर हो जाएं वो सेफ हो जाएं तो मेरा भी ये दिल कर रहा है कि जो बेचारे यंग बॉयज़ थे उन्होंने गलती से उमर बकरी की जो बातें सारी करनी एजुकेशन छोड़ दी सब कुछ किया अभी वो सब बेचारे अरेस्ट हो चुके हैं तो अगर उनको कोई सेफ्टी मिल सकती है सिक्योरिटी मिल सकती है मेरी वजह से तो इसलिए कहा मैंने उनको कर दूं इसमें एक मुसलमान जो भी किसी दूसरे के लिए कर सकता है अल्लाह ताला उसको जिसके जज़ा देगा
आमीन जागे मार
Could see that meeting Kamran after all this time had affected Hassan.
Yeah, and it worries me because at the end of the day I'm going to fly back. These guys are stuck here, yeah, and they're going to face the brunt of what was going on. It's not a nice feeling to know that you can walk away from it and everyone else has to put up with this rubbish, yeah, that they're going to face.
Yeah.
You know, he said, Hassan, I love you so much that I'll still do anything for you. And that really got to me, yeah, in the sense I thought, you know, what can I do for him? Nothing, but look how so easily, you know, in a whole day, he hasn't met me in 5 years, he put his whole life, his whole career, his everything on the line for me. And, you know, you can't.
Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. I'm going to keep this short and to the point because it's all been said before by far more eloquent people than me. And our words have no impact upon you. Therefore, I'm going to talk to you in a language that you understand. Our words are dead until we give them life with our blood.
In late 2002, Hassan was in Islamabad for a 10-day visit. Junaid Babar was using Hassan's flat, and it was then Hassan was first introduced to Muhammad Sadiq Khan, who would eventually go on to become the ringleader of the 7/7 bombers.
Assalamualaikum. पहचाना है?
सर शायद मुलाकात हुई होगी लेकिन फिलहाल तो नहीं पहचाना।
इधर मैंने फ्लैट लिया हुआ था 306 में काफी देर बाद पिछले पहले देखने आए हैं वापस उसको दे लगा लूं गाड़ी शुक्रिया भाई I can't believe that was very easy. I cannot believe I'm actually back here. This is the flat that I used to pay 18,000 rupees a month for. There's more security in there. If you turn off the camera while we just walk past them, we should be alright.
Yeah, let's do that.
It's quite nice to be back actually. Hasn't changed at all. At all. The only thing in Pakistan so far. I wonder if we could knock on.
You want to knock on the door?
Yeah, I don't mind. I really want to see
Okay.
the flat, yeah. This is my apartment. Nothing has changed, honest to God. The amount of jihadis that were stood in this flat is amazing. In this lift, actually. Yeah. Used to conduct a lot of discussions on these balconies, actually, because we feared that the flat was bugged. Took this flat. Let's go and have a look here. I'm quite excited right now. Here it is, 305. Do you want to knock? You want to knock on and talk to him? Because you look a bit more Western than I do. This is the flat that I had. So basically, yes, this is the living room, and I had virtually nothing in here at all. So the way you can see it's designed. Have you got me? Yeah. The way it's designed is really different. We had sofas here. Like we had nowhere near as nice as this gentleman's sofas, but we had sofas there. We just had it here, and it was literally, it was here on this spot that Muhammad Sadiq Khan was sitting when I entered the flat. MSK was sitting.
How long did he stay at the flat?
I don't know actually, because I was just stopping over at that time.
But you owned it?
Excuse me?
You owned it?
I owned it, yeah, but I had actually come just to stop over to pick up some clothes, and I was heading back off, and he was sat here, and I sat there. We had a sofa there, and we had a sofa there, and we had two single sofas, and he was sat on the single sofa. I was sat here. Sorry, he was sat here. Junaid Babar was sat here, and I came and sat, I think, there across. And there was guys all over. I mean, there were other guys of ALM and everything else, and I spoke to him right here. Kitchen mein no problem. Mera jitna mess hota aapka mujhe kuch. This is kitchen exactly the same. But I think he's put new glass in there. And here it was, yeah. It's quite spacious and it's quite Western. Ours was a lot cleaner actually. But it's exactly the same. I cannot believe I'm back. I'm just finding it difficult because there were so many good memories as well as obviously bad. But I lived here for 1 and a few months. 1 year, a few months. It's gorgeous. And I don't know if he's going to let us see the rest of the flat, but I can always ask, I guess. Yeah. Do you want to come through? You got the kitchen, yeah? You can look at the size of it, yeah. It's humongous, yeah. Bhajan, hum kamre dekh sakte hain, yeah. Thank you, sir. So this used to be my room, and the only reason I selected it is because it was the smallest room, and that was my bathroom, and that bathroom, oh my goodness, has not changed at all. He hasn't changed it one little bit at all. And I chose this room specifically because it was the smallest and hence the easiest for me to maintain. These two were basically guest rooms, and they were rooms that I never used. Used for basically an office, it was used as a stopover place, as a thing, because you can just see the size of it, yeah. And in those rooms you could easily fit 4 or 5 people if you want to. Shukriya bhai, mera naam Hassan hai. जी नो थैंक यू वेरी वेरी मच हम अभी लाहौर ही जाएंगे वापस अब मुहर्रम का भी दिन है तो मुश्किल ही चलेंगे थैंक यू वेरी वेरी मच थैंक यू तो आपको डिस्टर्ब भी किया इंशाल्लाह थैंक यू वेरी मच थैंक यू for that oh yeah that was so many of the guys have been here and there's going to be so many people who even though they hate my guts they're going to be so happy to see the flat. Really? Because that flat, everyone loved it. Yeah, it was just so nice. It was just so nice to come here because it was just, in comparison to the Al Mahajirun offices in Lahore, even though this wasn't an official office, it was still the guest house where everyone stayed, and it was just because we could so easily come back and forth. And the guys downstairs at security, I used to say that if someone, all you have to basically say is I'm going up to 305, and I said a load of guys will be coming frequently and regularly. Don't ask them. Don't say anything. That was it. निकाल दिया सिक्योरिटी ने निकाल दिया सिक्योरिटी ने
देख रहे हैं Just before we left Islamabad, Hassan wanted to take one last drive to the square where he had spent a lot of his time.
Really, I remember actually it was these little kids that, looking at these, there was a little kid who a bit of construction was going on and he was working there and he must have been about that little girl's size and it brought me to tears, yeah. And it made me more angry, I guess, at the West as well.
Why?
I just used to think that this is what Muslim kids are forced to do. You know, it's no way for a child to have to stand here, beg all day and then work and then... But anyway, that's it. What can you do, yeah?
It doesn't make you cry anymore though, does it?
It does, yeah. I'm feeling very sad looking at those kids. Any kid it would be though now. And I don't feel angry towards anybody. That's the difference, I guess. That's the difference, where I don't feel anger and compelled to blame anyone. It was all to do with blaming the West for everything, I guess, innit? So that was the type of mentality that we had. I just feel sad that I'm leaving here again. And it's just nice to actually be here in F10 Markaz again. I haven't actually sat here. And we would sit here like this, but the tables were generally on the outside. And just eat, yeah, and it would be a place where we'd discuss and talk and relax. And it was, you know, it's probably the most normal part of my whole experience in Pakistan, by being here in this Markaz. And it's really quiet right now because it only livens up at night. Just sitting here thinking that I could really live here with my family quite easily, if I could have a normal life, I guess, which I doubt I can ever have. Yeah, it's just difficult. I just don't think anyone is ever going to allow me to have a normal life, and I think with which course that I'm going, you know, the course that I've chosen now to go down,
that's not really normal either, is
That's
it?
not normal, no. So I just can't have a normal life either way. I have a lot to account for and a lot to answer for, and one of the ways of doing it is by doing the work that we're doing and by trying to make up for the mistakes that we made in the past.
Do you think that there are people who came to your talks and hung out with you and did everything you talked about that perhaps went on to die?
Well, you're asking me. Yeah, there were people who I know of. I prefer not thinking about it, because that's the only way I can deal actually with it.
The next day in Lahore, I got a phone call telling me that Hassan's life was under threat. I had no idea who the caller was or why they wanted Hassan. I booked Hassan on the next flight out of Lahore, and I told him not to say anything to anyone, including his family. The remaining interviews and filming with his family was all cancelled. We had to get out immediately.
I've been forced out of the country. I don't think they really appreciated our stay here. I'm looking forward to seeing my family, but at the same time, I'm quite sad actually that I'm leaving now. It's not dawned on me yet, because it's only been 9 days, and though it feels a lot longer, and though it's been a very anxious and tense time, I really would have preferred staying here a lot longer actually.
The departure was a bit sudden, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, it's just not a nice feeling to leave the way I'm leaving, and without my family knowing, without anyone knowing that I'm leaving. And it's very sad to know that I'm leaving Pakistan, especially after 5 years. I've only come back for 9 days, and especially because we've got still so much to record as well. But that's life.
Anyway, ठीक है.
कैमरा के लिए आपका नहीं दिखा रहा मुझे दिखा. I won't close that crowd.
Yeah, just keep going.
Back home in the UK, things get worse. The Greater Manchester Police suddenly start taking a great interest in our film. I'm effectively told to stop filming with Hassan. Nevertheless, I go to visit him in Manchester.
The momentum that we had from Pakistan has just completely disappeared. We haven't got any more, and it's been quite frustrating to learn that Greater Manchester Police, for one reason or the other, have started really paying a lot of interest into our whole project. It just seems to me, because I'm not towing the line of the government or the police, and that's why I don't think they want my story or my analysis or my views to actually come out.
How do you feel about the way you've been treated?
I'm angry. If it wasn't for my faith, if it wasn't for my faith, and if it wasn't for me believing so strongly in what I'm doing is for Islam, honestly, I probably could have so easily have slipped back into being an extremist stroke terrorist again, so easily. And I do get frustrated. They hound me, they hound my family, they hound my friends, they hound everybody. People are looking at me still thinking, oh well, has Hassan changed or not? And I don't know what else they want me to do that I'm already not doing to prove that I've actually changed. If it wasn't for my strong character, I believe it would have been so easy to think, you know something, let's just go back into this jihadi world, because that's all that is going to accept me anyway.
You feel you're being hounded out of the country?
Yeah, but where can I go? I was hounded out of Pakistan when I was there. Within 9 days, I was chased literally out of Pakistan. I've come back here and I'm being chased. It's like, what exactly does the world want with ex-jihadis? Is there any incentive for them come out. I mean, it seems fine for those people who weren't involved in any actual physical training and maybe just ideas, but those who were involved, I mean, what's there for them at this moment in time? It's absolutely nothing.
A couple of weeks later, things get a lot more serious. Shiv Malik, the author Hassan had been working with, gets woken up by the Greater Manchester Police demanding that he hand over all his material. We too are told that we must also hand over our rushes. In fact, any news organisation that had filmed with Hassan or written about Hassan in the past is told to do the same. With all this going on, BBC Newsnight decide they would like to do a story on Hassan.
What's the sort of main message you want to give?
My main message I basically want to give is, I mean, there's got to be some type of place that anyone who wants to get out can go to without feeling that if I'm going to go out, I'm either going to be forced to work with the police or I'm going to be arrested and imprisoned. And that's the current feeling right now with people. So there's nothing available out there. And it's not an easy thing to do. You know, most people who have been inside this network of jihadis and extremists have been in for a long time. And it's a scary thing to be able to step out and completely change your whole life. And if there's nothing there to support you, it's so easy to fall straight back into it.
Do you think the police, though, actually understand the fact that you've made this change? I mean, have you actually gone to the police and said, do you want to talk?
Yeah, I've approached the police twice. We're not interested in you at all. We're not investigating you. We're looking, why are you harassing me and why are you stopping me from working?
I look a bit scruffy, but I'm emptying my mouth of this chewing gum.
It comes from the door, though, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so just ignore no rush, carry on with the phone and start it now.
I've been following the story too about Hassan Butt for a number of years, and I just sense there's a lot of activity going on in terms of maybe intelligence service and certainly anti-terrorist police investigations around this area. And it is quite possible that Hassan Butt now potentially faces arrest at some time in the near future. He certainly believes that. And I think his story is an interesting one to tell on Newsnight. You know, I really want to try and get the story out on Newsnight maybe next week, and we've just done a long interview with him. On the basis of his biography, his history with the jihadi movement, but really making the point that actually he's changed. It gives me some confidence, you know, as a journalist working on the story, that I've seen that process happen over a period of 2 years probably. It hasn't just been instantaneous, and I'd be a lot more suspicious about it if it was instantaneous. My sense of it is that he is genuine, he has genuinely changed. And I think he could be an asset to Britain, basically. He's hugely sensitive, obviously, because who knows, the police may believe, for example, that he's still linked to the network. And we can't absolutely rule that out 100%. Obviously, I can't get inside his head, but what I can do is make an assessment based on knowing him for 3 or 4 years and watching the change. And I think it's credible. I think it is really credible.
Greater Manchester Police have taken the unprecedented step of releasing extracts from 12 days of interview with a man suspected of funding, recruiting and fighting for Al-Qaeda.
A month after the Newsnight piece went out, suddenly everything changed.
But has told police he's made up many details in the book about his jihadi past. Mr. Butt last year met Home Office ministers to advise on how to combat extremism.
According to the police interview, everything in the book was a fantasy. He had never met 7/7 bomber Mohammed Sadiq Khan, and nor had he been stabbed in the shoulder as he had claimed.
Can I ask you whether what's emerged today means the book is a sham? In effect, he shafted you, hasn't he?
As I said, there's a court order on discussing all of this, so it's hard to actually discuss any of this. But we will see. We will see.
The police statement was a real shock. With the police order hanging over us and questions over Hassan's past, the BBC pulled the plug. But for all the other journalists, it was much worse. Their reputations were in tatters. But was he really making everything up? I went to see Shiv Malik, who had spent the last 2 years writing a book with Hassan.
So when I walk out of the court on that day, the guy from Channel 4 News says, "The book's a sham, isn't it?" And I have to stand there and answer, yes. I give them a fob-off answer, you know. I do what all journalists hate to hear, which is that we're in the midst of a legal battle and once this is resolved, it'll be a different situation, but I can't talk. But I was thinking to myself, God damn, yeah, sure, it's a sham. Sure, what he said is untrue. But then since then I started looking at the fine detail and things weren't making sense. When he gets arrested, Hassan says to the police officer, and this is according to the police testimony, which they also then sent to me, he says, yes, everything you said is true. So when he's charged with all these offences under terrorism, he says, yes, everything you said is true. Take me to the police cell and I will tell you in interview, I will tell you everything. That's what he says. Then they also say, we've got a statement from... Because they have to still convince the judge that this guy is a genuine terrorist, right? Otherwise, their case falls apart, right? So they're telling the judge, and they have to disclose this stuff to the judge, we've got a document from Junaid Baba, which says that this guy was involved in, and I quote, serious terrorism offences in Pakistan. So what do they know? What do they know? So who is this guy? Like, he's managed to get away from the police by saying, oh, this is all a lie, because he knows that they don't have any evidence on him. Or is he genuinely actually a fantasist? Or are the police letting him go because this is some other double game that I haven't quite grasped yet? Or, as we found out, this is being manipulated by a third party who we don't even know about. And that third party happened to be MI5.
A lot of things didn't make sense. I remember after the 7/7 bombings, when I wanted to make a film about the attacks, I approached Hassan to arrange interviews. Within a few days, he had set up a meeting with some of the most well-known militants in the UK, including Abu Qatada. Could a man able to arrange such a meeting really just be a wannabe terrorist? In December 2008, I was asked to give evidence in a trial at Manchester Crown Court. The defendants, Habib Ahmed and Ranzeb Ahmed, were friends of Hassan's, and through him had approached me to make a film about training camps in Pakistan. It was alleged that the film was just a cover story, but in fact that they had been members of Al-Qaeda all along. Hassan was also giving evidence in the trial, but as soon as he mentioned MI5, everybody was asked to leave the court and his evidence was taken in secret. Richard Watson has covered many terrorism cases for Newsnight. Could it be that Hassan had been working with or for British intelligence?
I always thought one day I'd eventually cross-check everything with his family. There's 3 other things that happened in between that. CBS spent 6 months interviewing the guy and checking him out. And then he went on air to 20 million people across America as the jihadi who'd left. At that point I thought, well, okay, these guys know what they're doing. So I guess this story seems to be legitimate. Well, he later said something to me. He said, Shiv, and this was in regards to the stabbing, Mohammed Sadiq Khan, the whole thing, everything. He said, you wanted to believe it was true. I felt like slapping him and saying, how dare you, right? I guess I was. I did. It's true. There's a lot of stuff that I wanted to believe, in the sense that I wasn't willing to figure out whether he was being a liar every single time. I wasn't willing to sit there and say, this guy's lying to me. Because after a point, yeah, he becomes your friend, or he becomes someone you're associated with, and you say, well, look, I'll give the guy the benefit of the doubt. I'll assume he's telling the truth. And a really good journalist wouldn't do that. A really good journalist wouldn't get caught out by this kind of stuff. But You know, it wasn't just me. It was CBS. It was,
No,
it was Sunday Times.
You weren't the only one.
Yeah,
And
it was BBC. It was Newsnight. Everyone, all of us got crapped on. And in a sense, I still have something to salvage from it. I feel in that way a little lucky because I didn't publish that book. If I'd published that book, that would have been the end of me.
Shiv went to see Hassan after the news broke.
So I went with him in a car, and then he said, well, you know, Shiv, what else was I supposed to do? I'm in a police cell. They were saying 40 years, right? I wasn't going to sit in prison for 40 years. You know, maybe I'd have done 7, right? But not 40. So what else was I supposed to do? This is the only way to get out of it, right? I.e. lying to the police. But he couldn't say that either because he was paranoid about being bugged. Obviously, you can't say that you've lied to the police because that in itself is a criminal offence. So he says, well, look, Shiv, you know, imagine if I'm, even if I haven't left the jihadi network, but they put me in prison. He says, how am I going to survive in prison? Because what I have done, I've written articles for The Observer, I've gone on CBS, I've talked about leaving the jihadi network and how these guys have got it wrong, right? So between the jihadis and the racists, I'm not going to survive more than 2 minutes in prison, am I? So he's contrite, he's kind of trying to explain things, and he said, I'm sorry, and he said, look, you know, I'm sorry, you know, I kind of put you through this, and then he goes back to being evasive again. And then in the midst of this, like, you know, we're walking along and he sees a dead hedgehog. And he stops and he's like, it's like the world has ended. And he's like, he just looks at this hedgehog with like ultimate pity. And I just like, and I'm thinking to myself, you fucker, right? You bastard. You know, you sit there empathizing with this dead hedgehog, and yet the whole world around you is falling to pieces, and you can't extract yourself from your own ego enough to see what you've done and stand up for actually your principles. So if you really had any principles, what you do is you'd say, yes, put me in prison because I've done these things. I've declared that I've done them to the Home Office terrorism minister. And yet, I don't know. I'm still angry about it. It was really confusing. That whole thing was just confusing. I didn't get anything out of him. Except that the last thing he said to me, that was the last time we ever really kind of talked honestly, or how we used to talk. What he said to me was, he says, Shiv, it's just not in my interest anymore to tell anyone who the real Hassan Butt is. So that's what he left me with.
What did he say?
It was almost a year till I eventually saw Hassan again. He was defending himself in a trial where he had been accused of racially abusing a police officer by calling him a redneck. Despite the fact that he had lost the case, Hassan was in a good mood.
You can ask me, Masood, why I need to buy a phone.
Why do you need to buy a phone?
Because the damn anti-terrorist branch took my phone off me to interrogate
Yeah,
it.
tell me, what happened yesterday?
Well, right now, Masood, I can just tell you this much, that I'm exhausted. I'm not going to give you an interview, I'm going to speak to you, obviously. But
And I think Hassan proved his credentials as a crap lawyer.
The counter-terrorism unit at Manchester, who said I'm a fantasist, has decided to arrest me every time I've come in and out of Pakistan.
And this time take your phone.
And this time they've taken my phone because I'm using a BlackBerry. So they've actually got access to my emails now as well, which is very, very...
What?
For me, not
more
boring.
taxpayer money being wasted on officers.
It's a violation of my privacy. Imagine your whole, bloody hell, every single thing they're gonna look through. It's just considering I'm supposed to be a fantasist. It's surprising that they have so much interest for me, and they're always trying to contact me, even now, and they're even trying to say to me. So to be honest with you, I'm frankly just fed up of police. They have no consistency in what they're trying to say.
As you sow, so shall you reap.
While Hassan went out to buy a replacement phone, I talked with his eldest brother, Omar.
How did you feel when Hassan came out in the press and said that this whole thing had been a fabrication and a fantasy?
I was actually quite surprised at the reaction of the media that they didn't realise it. Because I've seen certain emails that he sent to press people, and how he was interacting with certain press people, and I couldn't believe the fact that they were believing everything that he was saying. If I'm saying to you now, you pay the amounts of money that you were paying to Hassan to any other kid in Cheetham Hill, he'll do the same thing that Hassan did. If my brother's getting paid for making people look like buffoons, why am I going to stop him? Why would anybody want to stop him? Obviously, I had discussions with him and said, look, do you think this is sensible? There may be some repercussions, and so on and so on. But at the end of the day, he's getting paid. He's not getting arrested. And you know that they have tried to arrest him and charge him with things, and nothing's come of it. Why are you going to stop it? If the media wants to, pay him to say certain things and do certain things, then okay, fair enough. The police aren't letting him get a job. Every single time he's tried to set up a legitimate business, the police are the ones who've come along and I should say MI5, come along and tried to, and have actually shut down the business. The police really don't like Hassan. And they've been trying for the last, I would say, 7-8 years to really have a go at Hassan, and unsuccessfully failed miserably. Spent, can you just imagine the person who has to justify the budget that they've probably spent on Hassan, and at the end of it, it's all turned out to be a fabrication?
But why have they not managed to prove anything? I mean, was he completely lying?
Well, there's the question. Ask the question. What if you've spent that much money, that much surveillance, bribed people to try to get information out of them, and you have nothing? What should that tell you? Hassan did some silly things when he was 22. He made money out of the press. He was living a lifestyle that was fun for him at a certain point. And because of that now, because the police have got a certain idea about him, it has caused his house to be raided 5 times. And when I say his house, the family home, so includes his mum's house. Untold stress on me, stress on my family members. Am I going to blame him? No. Did he do anything wrong? No. Have I done anything wrong? No. So why is this happening to us? Any Muslim who practices Islam or wants to walk the path of helping other Muslims has to go through suffering. It's part and parcel of Islam. I don't know of any Muslim who was at the forefront of representing Islam, pushing it forward, trying to do what they thought was best, and didn't suffer.
What do you think is Hassan's way out of this situation?
He can't. He's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. The best thing to do, I believe, for Hassan is to stay out of the public eye, stay out of the media, and let the police continue their surveillance. Eventually, somebody's going to say, look, we've wasted too much money, let's move on to something more worthwhile. I'm telling you now, if he was involved in terrorism, they would have had him by now.
Well, that's always the question. I mean, if he was, obviously...
So then either he's a super agent, isn't he? Either Hassan is a super agent, a super agent that is able to thwart Her Majesty's finest secret service agents, or MI5, MI6, and they can't do nothing to him. Who the hell was training Hassan in counter surveillance, counter MI5, counter MI6, counter police? It's just, for God's sake, stop wasting the money. Spend it on dental contracts.
Even, I'll give you an example, especially with Pakistani families. Someone comes home from abroad, you expect someone to pick you up and whatnot. Whereas I actually inform my family, don't come to pick me up because I know I'm going to be raided. So
yeah, last night we were waiting for a while, and
it's like I said, it's like a battered wife in a way. You're expecting it
every single time it happened. You're just used to it. And that's what, even when today in court, when I was saying that regardless of how I've been treated unjustly, like imagine every time you're flying in, and in the last 2 years I've been back and forth from Pakistan 6 times, 3 times this year alone so far, and every time I've been stopped, every time I've been questioned, held up for hours. But each time I've been polite. I don't think any officer can even say that I've raised my voice to them, with the exception of once when I argued with them, because I generally was very fed up. But you're just used to it. It's just, unless you experience, it's something that people can't really understand or appreciate. But I've gotten 100% used to it now. It's like, so what? I don't really care what happens anymore.
But you don't want it to be part of your life, do you?
No one wants to be harassed. No one wants to, every time someone wants to know exactly who you've been calling, when you've been calling, what's on your email, what's not on your email, everything that's private. No one wants their private life to constantly be infringed on to such an extent that you don't actually have a private life anymore.
How much of that do you think is your own fault?
A lot of it's my own fault, but at the same time a lot of it's the authorities' fault. Why it's the authorities' fault is, especially Greater Manchester Police in particular, they've turned around and they've said I'm a fantasist, so why they don't leave me alone after that?
What do you think? Obviously you don't know their motivation behind it, but what do you think is their motivation behind it?
I've no idea. Sometimes I think maybe they've got a budget to fulfill and this terrorism threat isn't as real as they would like to make it out, and then other times I think they're just not satisfied until they put me behind bars for a long time. It's going to be difficult for them, considering that they themselves have said I was a fantasist. It's going to be difficult. Sorry bro, I've got to sort this electricity thing. I knew that was going to happen.
What's happened?
When the power's down and you give a power surge,
The alarm goes
off, because the police smashed in the alarm. It's never been fixed since.
Is that what they say here with the alarm off?
No, once we close that door, bro, the alarm will.
Oh, this door?
This door, yeah.
Okay.
It'll go off after about half an hour. New phone, thanks to GMP. But I'm getting old, man. I'm getting white hair. Really, I never had white hair. It's because I shave it, you can't see, but I've got a lot of white hair now. I didn't have any white hair, at all.
Challenging the ideas of extremists and so on. Are you still?
Well, I don't know.
Convinced by that?
I think the whole world is trying to figure out whether I still am an extremist or not.
Whether you're an extremist or not. What do you see yourself as?
Me? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where I stand. Honestly. I don't know where I stand anymore.
You were very adamant at the time that, suicide bombings and all of those kind of things are wrong.
Don't get me wrong, I still believe that.
Okay. Alright.
But whether the Taliban are extremists, whether Al-Qaeda are extremists is a question.
You're going back to a life where you were much more accepted, much more comfortable, maybe, before you decided to change.
No, I don't think I am. I don't think I'm going back to a life where it was easy for me.
The whole thing happened in May last year. What were your thoughts when it came out?
I think everyone knows that eventually one day everything catches up with you. I just wasn't expecting it as fast as it happened. If you're asking what did I regret it, is that what you're trying to?
I guess, yeah. Did you regret it?
No.
How did you feel about when it all came out?
I was quite relieved, actually. I don't know what I felt simply because, even now, I know there's people who are saying, well, he lied to the police in order to save himself. Other people are saying, no, he genuinely is a fantasist. And there's other people saying, no, he's this super terrorist, or he's working for the security services, he's a member of the security services, and he's... So it's...
You're the only one who knows the truth, of course.
Obviously, I don't think anyone knows.
I don't
think. It's difficult because I don't even think I know who I am myself. Sometimes, it's become that muddled and that everything intertwined. I guess there's a bit of truth in everything, but I can't say that. I have to say that what I've told the police is the truth, and that is the truth.
What was your motivation for it?
My motivation? I don't know. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one to put my finger on. It's difficult to understand as well, myself.
Financial?
Partly, yeah. Definitely, I would say.
Power?
No.
Influence?
Influence, yeah, I would say. But not power. Because I never tried to set up an organisation or to take control of a lot of people.
But you had a lot of control over people.
I think a lot of people allowed me to control them.
Yeah,
I think there is a difference there.
That's power, though. Influence and power. Power is
Manipulation.
Manipulation,
yeah.
Which is powerful, which is a powerful thing.
Yeah, I do think without sounding really evil and horrible, I would say that, yeah, I did manipulate a lot of people. A lot of people.
And what are those people doing now? How did you manipulate?
I'm not talking about just the average person who's may have turned into an extreme. I'm talking about the press. I'm talking about individuals who would want to hear stories. Would want to verify journalists.
Do you not think idiots for believing you without actually sort of? They got from you what they wanted to hear, right?
Yeah.
They got from you a good story.
Yeah.
So, you know, did you not think actually, well, this is easy for me, I might as well just keep doing it.
Carried on doing it. But I think there's people who believe that there's truth in what I was saying as well.
Yeah.
Or certain parts of it was truthful.
That's always going to be up for debate. Obviously, we can never talk about that. But before that, you were having quite a hard time, weren't you?
Well, yeah, I'm actually on antidepressants at the moment to keep me.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm taking antidepressants.
That's a surprise for me, actually.
I've been on antidepressants now for about 3-4 months. There was a lot of things going in my head, and I needed to clear that, and it was getting difficult not working. It was getting difficult not doing things. I've always been an active person, maybe not in the conventional sense, but I've always been busy. There are times where I feel very low, very difficult to get things going, just because I don't feel like there's anything. I've been busy for the last 10 years of my life, except for the exception of like maybe the last 6 months or so. It's not been very busy at all, so that really gives me a lot of time to think and really contemplate, but not solve any issues in my own head. So it becomes difficult like that.
And what do you think is what is it that you want to do now? I mean, do you
now
think about that?
I don't know. I guess a normal. Sorry, my eyes are hurting from the flight because I need a bit of sleep. But I think conventional life is out of the question, in the sense of getting a job and settling down. I just think my whole appearance isn't the best. I don't feel comfortable in Western clothes, for example. I could never wear trousers and a shirt or a suit and tie.
Worn them for a while, I guess. It's just a question of getting used to it again.
Yeah, I guess it probably is, but I just don't feel comfortable in it. It'll be very difficult for me to get out of that framework. And I think maybe what does scare me and depress me actually is having a conventional lifestyle. You know, these last 8 years, it's like a roll-up. You know, media, security services, terrorism, international terrorism, book deals, film deals, all the rest of it too. A normal life is quite scary.
just being
your
ordinary guy.
Ordinary guy, yeah, your ordinary Joe. So. Scary thought.
That's probably the hardest thing for you.
That's what, definitely.
Does your wife not want that?
I never thought about that. Maybe I've never thought about what anybody else has wanted. It's if they want that for themselves, that's more than makes me happy. But I've never thought about. I've never tried to impose what I think a person should be like in their life. The same way I won't allow anyone to impose on me.
So I suppose she married you knowing who you are.
Knowing to a certain degree who I am. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think your wife knows you well?
I say she knows me better than anybody else. Definitely. But there are certain things I can't discuss with her too. And never would discuss with her either. She's been punished enough for being my wife, and I don't want to punish her anymore for that.
For the last 5 years we'd known each other, I was realising, just like everybody else in his life, I didn't know who he was. But I think that is the way Hassan wanted it to be, and how he was comfortable, knowing there were people out there, be it the media, intelligence services, somebody out there was spending time trying to work him out.